What if the ultimate paradox of human survival was not engineered by biological evolution, but by a single brilliant mind who learned how to extract life from thin air, only to use that exact same knowledge to synthesize industrial mass murder? Throughout history, human civilization has been inherently limited by the cruel, non-negotiable laws of resource scarcity. For centuries, our global population was mathematically capped by the Earth's natural agricultural capacity, bound to an inevitable cycle of starvation and demographic collapse. But at the dawn of the 20th century, a German chemist broke through the chemical matrix of the universe, unlocking an infinite source of life that today sustains nearly half of the global population. Yet, the exact same hand that fed humanity would soon become the global architect of chemical warfare, engineering the most horrifying weapons that ever suffocated a battlefield. This is the dark anatomy of Fritz Haber, the man who divided the laws of nature into a dual matrix of absolute creation and systematic destruction. If you are intellectually prepared to explore the terrifying gray zone where pure science mutates into political monstrosity, hit the like button, subscribe, and let us analyze the devil's alchemist. To truly comprehend the sheer scale of this chemical revolution, one must analyze the brutal geopolitical crisis that threatened human existence in the late 19th century, the nitrogen crisis. All living tissue, from the DNA strands in your cells to the vast wheat fields feeding continents, requires nitrogen to construct protein structures. Although our atmosphere is composed of nearly 80% nitrogen gas, it exists in a highly stable, non-reactive molecular form that plants cannot naturally absorb. Human agriculture was entirely dependent on limited natural deposits of fixed nitrogen, primarily sodium nitrate mined from the desolate deserts of Chile. The world was rapidly running out of fertilizer, and global starvation was a mathematical certainty. Fritz Haber looked at this atmospheric barrier not as an absolute law, but as a complex chemical engineering equation waiting to be solved. In 1909, operating within the strict high-pressure matrix of his laboratory, Haber achieved the impossible, the synthesis of ammonia directly from atmospheric nitrogen and hydrogen gas. By subjecting the gases to extreme pressures and intense heat in the presence of a specialized catalyst, he forced the inert atmosphere to yield its hidden chemical potential. This breakthrough, later scaled industrially as the Haber-Bosch process, fundamentally rewrote the thermodynamic limits of human civilization. It was an alchemical miracle. Humanity no longer needed to rely on the finite soil of South America. We could literally harvest food from the air. Synthetic nitrogen fertilizers transformed global agriculture, allowing crop yields to skyrocket and enabling the global population to expand from less than 2 billion to the billions we see today. If you have consumed food today, you are physically sustained by the chemical echoes of Fritz Haber's laboratory. For this monumental achievement, he would later be awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry, immortalized as the savior who rescued human civilization from the brink of absolute demographic collapse. But the universe demands a strict thermodynamic balance, and Haber's chemical matrix was about to enter its darkest, most volatile phase when the cataclysm of the First World War ignited in 1914. Fritz Haber did not retreat into the passive isolation of academic neutrality. Driven by an intense nationalistic loyalty to the German Empire, he placed his entire chemical apparatus at the absolute disposal of the military matrix. He quickly realized that the exact same chemical principles used to synthesize fertilizer could be inverted to manufacture explosives and munitions. As the Western Front degenerated into a static, bloody nightmare of trench warfare, the military high command demanded a radical technological breakthrough to shatter the Allied lines. Haber's response was not a mechanical weapon, but a weapon of pure chemical terror: chlorine gas. He weaponized science to transform the very air humans breathe into a suffocating, lethal poison. Haber did not merely formulate the gas in a distant laboratory. He went directly to the front lines of Ypres in 1915, personally supervising the deployment of thousands of pressurized cylinders containing his devastating chemical creation. The result was an unprecedented nightmare that fundamentally shattered the psychological landscape of human warfare. When the valves were opened, a massive, silent cloud of dense, yellowish-green gas drifted slowly across no man's land, settling into the Allied trenches. Chlorine gas reacts violently with the moisture in human lungs, instantly forming hydrochloric acid that dissolves the respiratory tissue from the inside out. Thousands of soldiers, completely unprotected and unaware of this invisible chemical monster, drowned in their own bodily fluids, experiencing an agonizing, suffocating execution. Haber watched the horrific efficacy of his creation with the cold, detached objectivity of a scientist observing a successful laboratory experiment. He fiercely defended his actions, infamously stating that in times of peace, a scientist belongs to humanity, but in times of war, he belongs to his country. To Haber, chemical warfare was a highly rational, efficient engineering solution to shorten the war, viewing death by poison gas as no different than death by conventional artillery. Still, but this dark obsession with chemical dominance triggered a devastating psychological collapse within his own domestic sanctuary. His wife, Clara Immerwahr, was herself a brilliant chemist, the first woman to earn a doctorate in chemistry from the University of Breslau. Clara looked at Fritz's military transformations with absolute horror, recognizing that he had completely corrupted the sacred Felsefi purpose of science, mutating life-saving knowledge into a weapon of pure evil. She continuously begged him to cease his chemical warfare projects, but Haber dismissed her pleas as unpatriotic sentimentality. In May 1915, just days after Haber returned from the successful gas attacks at Ypres to celebrate his promotion, Clara could no longer endure the psychic weight of her husband's chemical sins. She walked into the garden, took Haber's military service pistol, and shot herself in the chest. Her tragic suicide was a desperate, bloody protest against the monstrous paradigm of chemical warfare. Yet, the cold mechanisms of Haber's mind could not be stopped. The very next morning after her death, he left his grieving household to personally manage another gas attack on the Eastern Front. The trajectory of Haber's legacy would take one final, chillingly ironic turn during the dark horizon of the mid-20th century. Following Germany's defeat, Haber's institute continued to develop advanced chemical compounds, focusing heavily on pest control and agricultural fumigants. Under his supervision, his team formulated a highly effective hydrogen cyanide-based insecticide known as Zyklon B. Although Haber, who was of Jewish descent, was eventually forced to flee Germany in 1933 as the Nazi regime seized power, the chemical monster he created remained behind. Years after Haber died in exile, a broken and isolated man, the Nazi matrix repurposed Zyklon B from an agricultural insecticide into the definitive chemical instrument of the Holocaust. The exact chemical compound engineered under the guidance of a Jewish chemist was systematically injected into the gas chambers of Auschwitz, and millions of innocent lives, including members of Haber's own extended family, were suffocated by his industrial legacy. What then is the ultimate philosophical and historical verdict on Fritz Haber? He cannot be easily categorized as a pure saint or a pure demon. He is the ultimate manifestation of the dual matrix of scientific power. His existence proves that technological knowledge is entirely indifferent to human morality. The exact same chemical equations can grow crops or dissolve human lungs. The exact same molecules can sustain life or engineer industrial slaughter. Fritz Haber is the man who fed billions and killed millions, standing forever at the crossroads of human genius and absolute catastrophe. The chemical matrix he unlocked remains active today, reminding us that every time we look at a field of crops or a weapon of war, we are looking directly into the complicated, terrifying ghost of the devil's alchemist. Prove you are human. Are you a real human pop science and history enthusiast who watched this dark chemical saga till the very end? Or are you just a deadbot scrolling through the internet matrix? Prove your existence right now. Leave a comment below with the word nitrogen, hit that like button, and subscribe to help us break the algorithm for the next chapter. Thank you for watching Real Human. Stay free.